just switched the recording over to get a little bit of a higher quality image so we can stick this up on YouTube.
Cool. Thanks.
Morning, Scott.
Morning, how we doing?
Good.
Right. There he is. Brian Gribbins and Trevor calling in from California. So anybody think they got up too early to be on this thing? Them boys are up early. So there's Brian. Brian's maybe been up all night. Brian actually is a firefighter in the LA County Fire Department. You want to talk about a job. And Brian and I are good partners on a facility in Amarillo, Texas. Very excited about that.
Yes. Yes. Good morning, everyone. Glad to be here.
Thanks. Trevor's iPhone. That's our son out in California too. Recent Marine. Now he's a lobster diver and a big time, what do they call it? Free dive? Like you dive down, you hold your breath for like 7 minutes and dive down really deep. So pretty cool stuff. Yeah.
Hey, morning, everyone. Sorry, my hair's not as nice as Brian this early in the morning, so I'll keep the camera off for now.
Oh, that must be Ben.
Welcome, Mark Barrington, Mike Wagner. I see he's on here with an asterisk. What that means is he'll be back on. Joe's joined us. Joe and I kind of run this thing. It's kind of our give back. I'll explain more in the whole REIA thing, how all that works. So let's see. Wouldn't be Scott if I didn't do this. Do me a favor, everybody. Everybody who's on here. I'll show you something. Go up to your picture or your video, and then yep. I just kill mine. On second page now. Put down where you're from if you know how to do that. I know we got some people here from California. We got some people here from Michigan, a bunch of other places. Majority of people are going to be from Rochester, New York. So I do know that.
Morning, Scott.
Morning, Joe. How we doing, buddy?
Doing all right. Doing all right. How are you doing?
Doing all right. I'm a little technically challenged. I feel like Joe right now. I can't even find myself on the display screen.
I had to call Andy. I couldn't get on. Pre-registered. Thank goodness he sent me a link.
Hey,
I'm
Scott.
computer challenge times 10.
There you go.
Scott, in the top right corner of your total screen, the gallery view, there's something that says view. And if you click on that, there may be something that says hide self view or show self view.
Okay.
If it says show self
There we
view,
go.
that means you're currently hidden. Now you'll see yourself.
This is the only reason I invited Mike Wagner to this Zoom, so he can tell me how to do this thing.
That's right. I'm a Zoom expert. Let me tell you what.
I clicked on the the pre-registration. There was a link there, and I got right in.
You're smarter than me.
Lucky.
I won't touch my computer. Once I'm on, I don't touch it. And Mike, good morning, by the way. I appreciate you joining us.
Good to see you, brother.
You too.
There we go.
Okay.
Hey, good morning, everybody.
Morning.
Morning.
I can hear you. My name's Ivan. I'm I'm learning this. I'm pretty new to it all. So I just want to hear everybody's input, and I may have plenty of questions, and hopefully you guys can help me out with these.
Good morning.
Excellent. You're in the right room. What we do for people who are joining, we really start this up about 9 o'clock. We just kind of sit here and chit chat for a little bit and have a good time. And sometimes Joe and I'll rip on each other. How we're all slacking and all that. And let's see. I had to make sure I spelled. I'm in Savannah, Georgia, actually. I had to make sure I spelled it right. So, but, yeah, cool. I'm glad everybody's
Scott,
joining.
nobody slacks better than I do.
All right, there he is, Jonathan Dowling. That man right there. It says iPhone. The guy with the red shirt on. He'll put his name up there eventually.
That's me.
He made a commitment last April that by the next time we saw him, he would own a storage facility, or else we were going to brand his behind. That was the deal he made. We didn't make him commit to it or nothing like that. He committed to doing that. He said, if I own this facility, you guys can brand my butt. Well, none of us wanted to do it. And it was starting to get close to the date in October. And we started panicking. We're like, who is going to do this? And his wife was coming to the events. We're like, okay, she's doing it. If anybody's going to do it, she's going to do it, but only if he wants it. But he did it, man. He pulled it off. It was like, what, 3 weeks before the event, you closed on something?
Yeah, it was the 20th of September.
I feel like that's only part of the story, though, Scott. I hate to throw you under the bus, but Jonathan, I only think it's fair to defend you a little bit. You may not have made the commitment on Jonathan's behalf, but you were buying him drinks all night, which ultimately is what led to him making such a commitment at 2 a.m.
Come on, Mike. I wasn't that drunk.
No, I was talking more about the guys egging you on, the cameraman specifically.
Hey, it worked.
Yeah, you did it.
It sure did.
You
I
did
wouldn't
it.
change a thing about it.
Me neither.
Wow.
By the way, I just want to clarify. I wasn't buying drinks. I don't buy drinks. People buy me drinks, but no, only kidding. I think Mike actually. I think we put it on your room tab that night, Mike. So.
I was so asleep that I probably didn't notice.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Cool. All right. So yeah. So if you're on here and if you can change your name, put down where you're from. Like what I did. I just put my name and then Savannah. I'm in Savannah now. And I always put my phone number up there. There's a reason for that, and it's kind of a standing joke now, but I do it anyways. And I just like know where people are from. So if you go on your display, there's 3 buttons there. You can hit rename. That I know how to do. Right now, lucky enough to be in Savannah, Georgia. We'll be here for Thanksgiving. We're super blessed that our kids are going to fly in. Our son Trevor, who's 33, he's going to be flying in from California to be with us on Thanksgiving, and our daughter, who's 30, she's going to fly in from Denver, be with us for Thanksgiving in Savannah, Georgia. In my opinion, one of the most beautiful cities. If you've never been here, it is absolutely one of the most beautiful cities in the country. And now we're staying actually at Fort McAllister State Park, and that's one of the most beautiful state parks I've been to as far as a place to be. And then we'll be heading down to Key West. We'll be down in Key West for Christmas and New Year's. Our son's going to be going to Japan to join his girl's family over there for Christmas. And then our daughter is going to fly down to Key West and spend Christmas and New Year's with us. So,
very nice. Good plans.
Yeah.
I'm going to mail you a snowball, Scott.
Yeah, thanks. Why don't you just come and bring it with you, Joe?
Oh, man. I'd love to.
Hey, Scott, while you're out there in Savannah, you got to go check out Vinny Van Gogo's. Probably the best pizza in the Southeast.
Okay.
It's downtown.
Jonathan knows me very well. If you follow me on Facebook, I'm a foodie. So I'm actually adding that to the Go-Go's pizza. Yeah. Cool. All right, what we got here? Okay, cool. So check my phone quick, make sure everybody's able to get on who wanted to get on. Should have been able to. Okay. And our California boy join us here in a little bit. Kevin Gnomes will be joining us here in a little bit.
Yeah, what is it over there? I'm just about to hit 6 a.m.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes Scott would be on the West Coast doing these calls. Get on, he'd wake up 5:45 in the morning. Remember that, don't you, Scott?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Those are the ones that I sometimes don't join. So I'm not a go to
We'll
bed
tell
early
people
guy.
that Scott retired.
Yeah.
When
Yeah.
Scott invited me to be here at 8:45, because it was Scott, I had to clarify whether or not we were talking about AM or PM.
Oh my God, Mike. Oh, we
Oh,
appreciate you
man.
being on here.
Yeah.
So you and
Absolutely.
Scott are both not early risers.
No, I actually am an early riser. I've gone back and forth. I'm now a rise when it feels right kind of guy. So I did sleep in until 7:30 today, but often I'm up at 4 or 4:30 because that's when my eyes open and it's time to start the day.
Wake up when you're done sleeping, basically.
That's right.
Yeah. I was gonna sound everybody else, be able to sleep until you're ready to wake up. So cool. I'm sometimes up at 4:30 and 5. I actually remember passing somebody in a hotel lobby at 4 a.m.
Oh,
It was a storage event in January in Dallas that Mike Wagner hosted. And my son and I were out having a good time. And we came into the hotel lobby at 4 o'clock. They had ice cream in there where you could buy ice cream at the kiosk. So we're sitting there eating ice cream, and all of a sudden he and Chris Michaels come down at 4 a.m. And I was like, are you just going to bed? I'm like, oh, you just getting up? And the one regret I have for that day is I didn't do a selfie. We should have done a selfie with my son and I and Chris Michaels and Mike. That was a funny event. But
I've
that's
never
what we
been
do. We
more
get
impressed by you, Scott. That morning, I'm telling you guys, he looked better than I've ever looked after showering and combing my hair and putting a suit on for a wedding. It's 4 a.m. and Scott walks down like he's just had the best beauty rest of his life.
Yeah, I don't know.
I've been up at 4. I've been up all night like that before, and never did I look as well as Scott Spear looked in that moment.
He's unbelievable.
Mike, that's called the booze glow.
Max Stoller, welcome. Let's I'm gonna run around here really quick. Everybody else said I said hi to already. Max Stoller, glad you're here. Max Stoller, a recent I'm gonna say, what's the best way to put this? Max Stoller recently took a big step, moved some of his IRA money to equity trust so he can self-direct his IRA. And I'm gonna talk a little bit about that. The benefits and the joys of being able to self-direct your IRA. But Max did that, and he's going to be able to use his IRA money to invest in real estate deals. And once he learns a few more things, he's really going to accelerate his IRAs. So that's a cool thing. Gabriel Pestos. I know I said your last name wrong, dude. Welcome. Good partner of mine. Gabriel and Mike Perkins, those two are grinders, man. When it comes to being on the phone, they just grind it out. They find deals. I don't know how they find them. They're awesome. I love working with those guys. They just grind it out on the phone, and that's what it takes. And Gabe has done some great things. He's been doing it for a while and has made some nice wholesale fees. And I know Mike's a little new to it. And both these come from a background where they don't have any real estate background. They just kind of jumped into it, just started grinding it out. Brendan, welcome. John, welcome. Paul Silk, or said, hey to you. Bob Ross, good partner of mine. We own a facility near the Martinsville NASCAR racetrack down Martinsville. Brian Buxton, good guy. I've lent him money over the years. Let's see, run on down. Barrington. This guy and I have done a couple deals together. Barrington's kind of a legend in Rochester. So that dude has wholesaled some properties. I'm glad to have him here. Patrick, welcome. Bree, glad you're here. Bree, are you out in California too? She might be in listen only mode.
Maybe muted.
Yeah. Miriam, welcome. Carl Weeks. This is a legend in Rochester. This dude has property managed more properties than anybody I know in Rochester, New York.
I think he's over 6,000, 5,000 or 6,000 properties.
Yep.
Insane.
There you go. Jerry Stewart, welcome. AIM, whoever you are, welcome. Rob Matthews, good friend of mine. He and I've done a lot of things together over the years. Appreciate that. My cousin Marie Kenyon, she's on this call. I was like, hey, why don't you join us, learn more about this storage thing? So we come from a big family. Her father and my mother related 12 brothers and sisters during the Depression. It was 12 brothers and sisters in a small house. And from that has come about 100 cousins, I think it is. And we all know each other like on a first name basis because of reunions and family gatherings and stuff. That's the cool thing about traveling is I get to see all my family members. And Marie, we just spent some time together this summer. Brenda, welcome. All right, so we're all set here. It's a little bit after 9. I'm going to kick this thing off. Welcome everybody. For you guys first time joining, if you're new to this, hey, I want you to do me a favor if you can. Go up to where you can see your smiling face. There's 3 buttons up there. Edit your name. Put down where you're from. I know a lot of people are from Rochester. This call actually is being run by the FFREIA group, Freedom First and Real Estate Investment Association. It's part of a national group. If you live in Rochester, you should join FFREIA. I'm not saying that to promote it or to raise money for FFREIA. It's just a networking group of good people. I travel all over the country. Once you're part of FFREIA, you can go to other cities and join other REIA meetings. I've done that many times. It's awesome. You're meeting good people. And if you don't live in Rochester, New York, like I have Michelle Walters, she's in Ohio. There's probably a REIA group local. Join a REIA group. If you're serious about real estate and want to learn more about real estate, don't be intimidated. Join the REIA group. It's REIA. If you put in REIA in the city that's near you, there's probably a place that meets there. But okay, so we're part of FFREIA. We are called the Alternatives Group of FFREIA. What we do is we get together and we talk about how to invest in real estate other ways than landlording. There is a group, and Carl Weeks is one of the guys who runs the other group. It's called the Landlording or Landlord Support Group.
DIY REI, the name changed. It's DIY REI now. And this is now DealMasters.
Oh, we're DealMasters. That's right. We're DealMasters. Yeah. Andy McQuaid is the brains of the outfit. Look, I'm just the guy here. That's
incorrect. Incorrect.
We call Andy the man behind the curtains, like the Wizard of Oz. He makes all these things happen. But yeah, we're the Deal Makers group. Sorry about that. Yeah, what we do, we just learn how to make deals, how to make money in real estate. Disclaimer, there's a big disclaimer. You had to click on it when you join. We don't offer legal advice. We don't offer tax advice. If our situation's different than yours, if we say something and you want to do it, double check with an attorney, a licensed professional, a CPA, okay, before you do it. Yeah, we're just here to offer advice. That's it. And that's Joe Labavera and I run the DealMasters group. It's kind of our give back. Yeah, we've done well in real estate, but the only reason we've done well is because so many people have helped us to get to where we are that we decided to stay with the group and we get back. And honestly, we get more from the group than we give to the group. And that's a thing. Once you get a certain size in real estate, some people are like, oh, I don't need this anymore. I'm gonna call BS on that because people helped you to get where you're at. It's time for you to give back and help other people get to where they want to be. And that's the reason I invited Mike Wagner. Today's event, we're going to talk about self-storage. That's what the topic is this month. And Joe and I were going to do this Zoom, and I said, who's the smartest person I know in self-storage? Of course, Mike Wagner popped to the top. If you don't know who Mike is, you're going to learn very quickly who he is. You know, there's a saying that goes, you don't always want to be the smartest man in the room. And that's why I invited Mike to join us today. Mike has made a huge impact on my life and many other lives. I'll go into more detail on that. But I will say, I'm going to put a little asterisk on this because Mike was joking earlier about when he said, what time is this going to be? 8:45 a.m. or p.m. because he knows me pretty well. Another asterisk Mike put on this is his wife is very pregnant. He said, if I'm not on the call or if I jump off all of a sudden, that means his wife Melanie's going into labor. And Mike, what's this going to be? Number 4 for you guys?
This will be number 4.
Excellent.
Congratulations.
Yeah. Congratulations, dude. Super excited for you guys. Mike RVs a lot too. He's not quite a full-timer RV, but he and his family travel a lot. So much so, and with the 4th child coming, he's actually had to upgrade his rig. He's getting is it a Kenworth, Mike?
That's a Volvo.
A Volvo tractor trailer truck, like the things that you see that haul trailers down the road. Mike's getting that to haul his 5th wheel because of the size of his family. It's really cool. I've seen a couple pictures of it. I can't wait to see this finished product. So if Mike has to jump off all of a sudden, it's because his wife's going into labor, and Mike, that's priority. So for sure. As most of you know, I RV full time, travel cross country. We sold our house. I grew up in Rochester, New York, built a decent real estate portfolio there, and just kept going and growing. And it's a funny story. Mike Wagner and I have known each other for a lot of years. Mike Wagner, the last rental that he was gonna buy that he opted not to was the first rental I bought. And when Mike bought that, we've known each other for a while now, and I'm like thinking to myself, why is this dude not buying this rental? We're buying it for like $35,000. It's gonna rent for like $600 a month. Like, dude, what are you doing? He's like, I'm gonna get into self-storage. I'm like, self-storage? He's like, yeah. And Mike, yeah, so I'm thinking to myself, me being the arrogant person I am, I'm kind of like, oh, that's cute, Mike. Okay, you go build your self-storage business. I'm gonna build a real estate business. And yeah, I'm hustling, I'm doing things, this, that, the other, and doing okay at real estate. But I know I'm looking at Mike, we talk a lot, and I'm like, this dude, it looks like he's not working near as hard as I am, and he seems to be making a lot more money than I am. So after about 2 years, I finally sat down with Mike after his like, dude, would you just sit down and talk with me? After 2 years, I finally sat down with him and said, oh, self-storage. Okay, cool. This is what it's all about. And Mike's going to talk more about that. But because of Mike, we're able to travel full time. My wife and I were in an RV, we're traveling. I still do business. I still do deals. And, but because of Mike Wagner and what I learned from him, I was actually able to hop in an RV. And we travel all over the country. Sold our house, sold our real estate portfolio in Rochester, New York. And, one of the better decisions I ever made good money in Rochester. I love Rochester market. One thing that helped me was I always looked at coaching like an expense. Sat down and talked to somebody and they say, you have to look at coaching more like an investment. Yeah, you're good at what you do, but Michael Jordan's good at what he do, but Michael Jordan has a coach. I'm like, okay, well, if Michael Jordan has a coach, maybe I should look into this. So I just start looking at coaching as an investment. It's funny when I get with my accountant every year, he sees how much I spend in coaching. He's like, dude, you know what you're doing. Why are you having people coach you? And I point to the coaching number, how much I spend there. And I look at how much I made last year. I point to that and I said, because of this, I have this. And that's true. So if you're thinking coaching is an expense, look at it maybe a little bit differently and maybe look at a coach, but you got to find the right coach. There's tons of coaches out there. Trust me, fitness coaches, life coaches, marriage coaches, business coaches, just find the right coach. Not only that, you want to find the right coach who can coach you at the right level. And that's the thing about Mike. Mike is my coach. He's my storage coach. I love that guy. We've been friends for a lot of years. He's my coach. He coaches me at a certain level. And he has different coaching programs. And it's called the Storage Rebellion. I got the sweater on today. And a lot of people on this call are part of the Storage Rebellion Network. It's just an awesome group of people. Mike has created a culture there where a lot of people, you help other people. Yeah, we're competitors in a way, but really we're more for helping other people. And that's an awesome thing about what Mike's done. Let's see. We had an event in Atlanta in October. We kind of figured it up because of the network Mike's created. That network has purchased, we believe, over 300 storage facilities across the country. 300 facilities because of Mike Wagner. Just quick numbers. Average facility is worth $1 million. People probably paid about 2/3 of that to own all these facilities. So, just think about the net worth that Mike Wagner's group, led by Mike Wagner, has created. So that's what I think about. It's just overwhelming. And I was reading a quote this morning, and it says, money makes you more of the person that you are. If you have more money, you become more of the person that you are. If you're a greedy person and you make more money, you're just going to be more of a greedy person. If you're a person who gives back, likes to help other people, like Mike Wagner, he's a great dad, he's a great friend, he's a great husband, a great coach, and he's just he gives back to charities like crazy. I don't know anybody who gives more money back to charities than Mike Wagner. So more money makes you more the person you are, and that's Mike Wagner. And with that, I'm going to introduce Mike. He's going to talk about self-storage. And Mike, go ahead. I'm just shut up now.
Thanks, brother. I appreciate you, man. And first, I want to apologize. To hear me clearing my throat a bunch, I'm on the tail end of something. We'll just leave it at that. And so Scott texted me and said, dude, I'm thinking we're just going to run this call pretty informally. I'll turn it over to you and you just talk for 40 minutes about storage. And, this is what the audience is like. And I'm like, dude, nobody wants to hear me talk for 40 minutes. Why don't you pepper me with some questions, and I'll just answer each one for 5 minutes. And then I was like, who am I kidding? I love to hear myself talk. I'll just start going and we'll see what happens. But that being said, I'm happy to answer questions. If you guys want to drop them in the chat throughout, that might be a good way. And if I notice it and it makes sense to answer in the moment, I will. If it doesn't make sense, or perhaps I don't notice it because I'm too caught up in my own world, we will hopefully save some time at the end and jump into a Q&A and do that. But long story short, I'll introduce myself to you. First and foremost, I'm a father and a husband. I've got 3 kids. 10 through any day now will be the 4th one added. I live outside of Rochester, New York. I was born and raised in Penfield. Went to school in Connecticut to be a physical therapist way back in the day. Spent 6 years and $250,000 to get an education that I then applied to the real world and almost did it for long enough to make my money back. College was a very expensive party that resulted in 3 degrees and the realization that I had no desire to do the thing that I thought I was going to do for the rest of my life. And so I said, well, crap, I got to figure something else out. And that's when I made the foray into real estate investing. And I did, I think, what a lot of you guys here have probably done or are looking to do. And that is I got started in the world of small multifamily and single family rentals. I was a landlord in the city of Rochester, primarily in the 19th Ward. And it went relatively well. Like I was a member of FFREIA for a long time when I was investing locally, and it was a great group, super supportive of my initial journey there. And everything was going well enough. We were making money. I bought my first house at 24. By the time I was 27, I had, 30 something apartments, and it was going okay. But what it wasn't doing is it wasn't getting me where I wanted to go fast enough. Where I wanted to go was the hell out of my job. And I had, I had this idea, I think like a lot of us do, that, if I could just make if I had 100 apartments, each making $100 a month, I do the math, and man, I'll be sitting pretty. That'll be good. It was like, cool. Well, fast forward 3 years, and I was 30 something apartments into the process, and I redid the math. And I was like, all right, well, I don't know if you guys have ever experienced this, but like sometimes things don't work out in the real world exactly how you pencil them out on paper. And so I had to redo the math and realized, all right, this is going to be 150 apartments that I need, which is still doable. But given that it took me 3 years to get to my first 30, I'm like, I want it out of my job yesterday, not in another 5 or 10 years or whatever it's going to take. And so that's when I made the transition to self-storage. I bought my first facility in 2011. The beautiful aspect of storage, and I'll share as many details as we can get into here today. And so, there's no sales pitch at the end of this. I'm just here to share with you guys my experience. And I believe very strongly in the idea of stewardship. And for those of you that might not know exactly what that means, you've heard it, but maybe not know, it's the idea that nothing I have is mine to keep. I've just been trusted with it, and it's my responsibility. I put air quotes around that because it's a welcome responsibility to do as much good as possible with the things that I've been trusted with. And so, yes, that's time and money, but also experience, expertise, mistakes, right? I have to steward all the mistakes I've made, share them with you guys. So hopefully you make different mistakes, because you're not going to get it perfect. And that's one of my take home messages is, don't wait till you think you know everything. Don't wait till the timing's perfect. Don't wait. If this is something you're interested in, just get out there and start breaking shit. And sorry, I don't know if I'm allowed to swear, but it's my call. So now I am. Sorry, Scott. Just get out there and start breaking things, and then put them back together and pick yourself up and move along. And of course, be wise and learn from the mistakes of others. So all of that said, when I realized that landlording wasn't going to get me where I wanted to go fast enough, I started to look toward other asset classes. And I looked at mobile home parks and commercial other, strip plazas and office space and all these other things. And I narrowed it down pretty quickly to mobile home parks and storage. The reason being, when I was looking at mobile home parks, I was looking at the idea of owning the land, and having people just rent the lots from me. I wasn't interested in owning the mobile homes themselves anymore because I had been a landlord for several years and I just wasn't cut out for it. And I want to be very clear that I am not bashing landlording. There are plenty of people on this call who have made great money doing it, and it can absolutely happen. It just wasn't a box I fit well into. Showing up at I had terrible processes, right? I didn't know what I was doing. I was just a kid running around the city trying to collect rent, probably more than I should, and showing up at somebody's at a house to collect rent, and hearing the story about how they can't afford it while they've got a cigarette in one hand, a beer in the other, and a bigger TV on the wall behind them than I've ever had in my life. Is like, it's not that you can't afford it, you're choosing not to afford it. And of course, that's on me to secure my asset and take it back through the eviction process. But those of you that live in New York understand that that's not the easiest thing to do all of the time. And there's a lot of cost and expense and wasted time to it. And so my blood pressure was rising faster than my net worth. And I decided I got to figure something else out. And that's when I made the transition to storage. And we bought our first property in 2011. It was September 29th, 2011. I know that because it was 12 days after my 30th birthday, and I really wanted to quit my job before my 30th birthday. But we bought a storage facility that was losing $2,000 a month the day I bought it. It was out in Syracuse, New York, right off exit 39 of the New York State Thruway. Paid $330,000 for it. And with the debt service that I used to buy it, which was a bank loan for $250,000, $40,000 of money that I had scraped. I had basically scraped the equity of my single family and multifamily portfolio. Essentially what ultimately, so in case any of you guys are in a position like this, we bought our last 3 houses all cash, and we did the Burr model. And then we refinanced into a blanket mortgage, and that cash out refi gave me the 40 grand in cash that I applied to the first storage property. And I also borrowed $60,000 privately. So it was a $350,000 project. The short version is that 9 months later, the property appraised at $750,000. We had taken it from 55% occupancy to 97% occupancy. And I'll interrupt myself and ask the question that many of you might be thinking. It's like, wow, how'd you do that, Mike? Like, you went from 50 to 90%. That's incredible. Give me the secret sauce. And it's like, well, if I've ever wanted like the slay the dragon, wrestle the tiger till it's dead story, it's right now. Like I want to tell you guys something that's super impressive, that I'm a super genius and that's why I was able to do it. I didn't have a clue what I was doing, but I knew I was going to not quit until I figured it out. Right. And so in retrospect, what I did was I answered the phone and I offered the customers of the storage facility a solution to their problem when it was convenient for them, not when it was convenient for me. Right. So the previous owner was neglecting the property. She would pack up and go to North Carolina for a month at a time, not answer the phone. Literally the single biggest complaint I heard from the customers about the previous owner is like, I can never find her to pay her. I'm like, I've got a solution for that. I can help you with that challenge. I'm not going to make that a problem for you. I will always be available to accept your money. And it was simple things like that that allowed us to turn that facility around. Like I said, about 9 months after we bought it, it appraised for $750,000, more than double our project cost. We refinanced, extracted the equity. I paid off the private investors, got my initial $40,000 investment back. And then we doubled it in size. We went from 10,000 to 20,000 square feet. And then we filled that up. And then we did the exact same thing again. Fast forward to 2018. So I ended up owning that property for almost 7 years. We were all in. Our project cost was about $800K. And I sold it for $1.8 million. About approximately 7 years after we bought it. And that's in addition to when we sold it, we were making about $90,000 or $100,000 a year in cash flow from that property. And I was spending about 5 to 10 hours a week running it. And so I was making more than I had made as a physical therapist, working 15, 20% of the hours that I had been working. And so to say that it worked out well, I think is an understatement. And hopefully you guys don't hear that as arrogance coming from me. The truth is, if I did anything right, it was what I did with that first round of success. So, you know, I'm whatever, however old I was, mid-30s, and I get $1 million check in the mail. Like, there's a version of me that would have done some really dumb stuff with that check. I promise you that. And he's I know him more well than I care to admit. But what I did with that was I decided, all right, what do I really want my life to look like? Like, yeah, it'd be nice to have a cool car or a nice truck. Scott, if you let me share my screen at some point, I'll show you ultimately the truck I did splurge on. But with that first round of success, I decided I was going to figure out what I really wanted my life to look like. And so I set out to really create a written vision for my life. And now that I don't have to worry so much about what I want or how I'm going to pay bills each month, what do I want my days to be filled with? One of the questions I ask my students often is like, if time and money were no object, what would you do with your life? And some people can answer that right off the bat, but very few people can answer it as what I would describe as purely as they probably should, given that it's the only life God gave us, and whether we waste it or use it really well, we don't get a second chance. And so even folks that can rattle off, well, I do this, I do this, I do this. Oftentimes there's a refining process that if you work through various exercises to really dial in the vision, you can get to the point where your entire life is filled with get tos instead of shoulds. So I wake up in the morning, Scott texted me yesterday. He's like, hey, you want to jump on this call? I was like, yeah, that sounds like something that'd be fun to do. Not, oh, should I? Right. And of course I had to clear it with my wife. We have 3 kids. So she's handling them downstairs, 9+ months pregnant. So let's make sure we all send her a thank you note. But the bottom line is storage created that freedom for me. And that's one of the things I decided was I want to share this with other people. And so that's what brought me here today. My hope is, and what I'll do maybe, Scott, is run through some of the fundamentals, guys. Like, you know, what is it about storage that makes it so good? And what is it about that you guys already know. My assumption is that many of you, that all of you are interested in real estate investing. My assumption is that many of you, maybe this is the first time that you're poking around the idea of storage, and you either have knowledge or firsthand experience around like landlording and rental real estate, traditional rental real estate. And if that's the case, the good news is all of the fundamentals that apply to residential real estate, landlording, et cetera, apply to storage. It's just all of it's easier in storage. And we can run through some of the reasons for that. All you're doing with a storage facility, and actually, let me back up and share this with you. My preferred strategy, and it is not the only strategy. It's not the best strategy for anybody other than me. And the truth is, it's not even the best strategy for me. It's just the best one I know so far for me. But it is one that I describe as low volume, high margin strategy. I've been doing this for 12 years now, and I've done less deals than Scott Spear has done in the last year. And I don't think I'm exaggerating when I say that. I mean, certainly I've done less than he's done in the last 2 years. I've probably on my own done like 7 deals, but we're taking them from 300,000 to 1.8 million, or from 500K to 1.5 million. The most recent one we did, Chris Michaels, some of you may know, great friend of mine, brother really, and a partner in my last storage deal. He actually found the deal. We bought it in South Carolina for 300 and I want to say 365, maybe it was 395. I don't remember. But all in, our project cost was 430 after we did some of the improvements and had some cash on hand to get the business up and running. Cause this is real estate and it's a business. It's not a hobby. We bought it for 430. I've never been there. Chris did all the work. I funded it, and we sold it a week and a half ago for 1.225 million. So we 3x'd the property in 27 months. You don't have to do very many deals if those are the kind of deals you're doing. Now, again, that's not to say that that's a better strategy than Scott's. It's just my chosen one. Scott's kids take care of themselves. Mine do not. And so I don't have the kind of time to babysit or manage or turn around 3, 4, 5 facilities at a time or in a given year. And so we use a low volume, high margin strategy. What we're looking for is a property that's been neglected, either physically, which is often the case, but more importantly, operationally. We're looking for a property who is owned by an unsophisticated owner who doesn't understand the potential value of what they could have. It's the same as what we do with houses, right? The tired landlord, you swoop in and save them from their tiredness by buying their house. Now, you're doing that, one, to help them, but also to get paid. And so you're not going to pay them more than it's worth. And we do the same thing in the storage world. So my general goal is I usually want to double or triple the value of a facility in 2 to 3 years. Does it always happen? No. But what this strategy does, and this is particularly pertinent right now because of where we are in the market, the cycle, the economy in general, storage as an industry. And we may get into this a little bit later, but for now, what I'll say is we don't allow the market as sophisticated investors to dictate if we invest. We allow it to color how we invest. And right now we are near the peak of a market. I'll be the first to tell you that. And there are a lot of people that have been buying for the last 2 years in a way that I would describe as reckless. And because of that, as the market kind of softens and reverts to the mean, right, comes back to normal, they're likely to get hurt. I'm not likely to get hurt. The reason being, we buy our properties at 50 cents on the dollar. So with the idea that we're going to force appreciation at least as fast as the market could ever take it back from us. That way, our worst case scenario is we added value and the market took it back. Well, we're still not upside down in the property, right? So hopefully that makes sense from a risk mitigation standpoint. I'm very big on, the first rule of investing being to preserve your capital first and grow it second. And what I just outlined is kind of the strategy for that. One couple quick fundamental things that I'll share with you guys. And then again, we can open it up to questions and whatnot. But if we look at an apartment, generally speaking, I think the landlords in the group would at least give me enough grace to use this as a rule of thumb. I understand there are differences. Some people might be able to run them a little leaner, but generally speaking, when you have a rental, habitational real estate, an apartment, of every dollar in rent that the property generates, you're going to anticipate spending about half of that, 50 to 55%, on your operating expenses, day-to-day operating expenses. And then with the 45 or 50 cents you have left over, you'll spend as much of that as you need to on debt service, assuming you have it. And then whatever's left over that is your profits, and that's what you put in your pocket. The cool thing about storage is that our income to expense ratio, our operating expenses, usually run about 30 to 35%. So out of every dollar in rental income that we bring in, we only spend 30 to 35% on operating expenses, which gives us a whole 20 cents, if we're comparing it to a typical landlording situation, to screw up with and still be better off than when I was a landlord. If that makes sense, right? So it's a forgiving business. Now, that does not mean you can just throw a bunch of storage units up in the middle of a cornfield and expect you're going to succeed. Obviously, you've got to get smart on it and you've got to do it the right way. But there is space to make mistakes in this industry. How do I know? Because I've made a whole bunch of them, and big ones, like 6-figure ones, and I'm still doing really quite okay. So that's the income to expense ratio. Why is that, right? And some of this might be obvious, some of it maybe not so I'll share it. Generally speaking, our storage facilities are all metal. They're metal walls, metal doors, metal roofs on a concrete slab. So the repairs that are necessary don't involve sinks or toilets or drywall or HVAC most of the time, unless you're talking climate controlled, but even so, you get the idea. And so our repair budget is considerably less. When somebody doesn't pay us, we're not out, 2 or 3 months rent plus $1,000 in attorney's fees or $500 or whatever it costs. We simply, instead of having to go through the eviction process in storage, we go through what's known as the lien process, which is essentially putting a couple. It varies by state, but generally speaking, we're putting a couple ads in the newspaper. Many states are allowing us to do that online now, which saves us a little bit of money. And we're hosting an auction. Obviously, we're sending them certified letters to let them know where they are in this auction process. But in the state of New York, the legal minimum is 72 days. So from the time someone misses a rent payment to when I can auction them is 72 days. On a $100 a month storage unit, I'm only down $200, $250 as far as uncollected rent goes. And I'm going to auction that off, and I may get up to that full amount back in the auction. But the bottom line is it's just easier. I don't have to go to court. I don't have to have an attorney. It's just a very simple process. And because of that, that's one of the things that contributes to this income to expense ratio being so low. So what's the result of all that? Storage is the most secure mortgage-backed asset on the planet. It's a pretty bold statement. And I can only say it because it's backed up by statistical truth. If you look at foreclosures, where somebody owns a asset, whether it's a house or a storage facility or any real property, and they have a mortgage on it, and they stop paying, they go into foreclosure, the bank takes it back. You guys all know how this works. That happens less to storage facilities than any other mortgage-backed asset on the planet, including the house you live in, assuming you have a mortgage. Single-family homes, statistically speaking, you're more likely to lose the house you depend on for a roof over your head. Owner-occupied single-family homes default more often than a storage facility. So if that doesn't speak to the potential profitability, I don't know what does. Let me pause there. Scott, redirect me. I want to make sure that what I'm sharing is most valuable to you guys. So Scott, you redirect me. You guys, if you have specific questions you want to put in the chat, you want to hear me talk about, I'm more than happy to dive into anything. Or if you give me no direction, God only knows what the hell I'm going to say next.
Yeah, you and me in direction. That's a big statement. You are a co-host now, Mike. You can do screen share. So that's cool if you want to do that. Andy, like I said, Andy McCoy, the man behind the curtain, he opened that up for you. But yeah, Mike and I talk quite often, so I'm good, but I know other people might have questions on here. If you do, go ahead, shout them out or put them in the chat, or
Yeah.
raise your digital hand. There's a way to do that too. If you look on the bottom, it says raise hand, you can do that. So
Cool, Scott.
yeah.
I saw Barrington popped one in here to the chat, so I'll hit that one first, and then we can jump into what others. And he said, "How do you underwrite these deals?" And I kind of started down that path and then got lost and asked for redirection. So I appreciate the question, Barrington. It's the same as a duplex. Income minus expenses. Obviously, we're going to have some different expenses because we're running a business and we've got some management software that you wouldn't have if you just had a 2-family house. We've got a marketing budget, etc. But the way we value a storage facility is we're going to take, and what I want to do, guys, real quick is I'm going to share with you a formula, and then I'm going to also, I want to tell you before I do that we're going to use this formula essentially 2 different times. We're going to run it as currently, right? So let's say we bump into a property, and maybe I'll use an example here. I'll make one up as we go. We're going to look at the property. What is the income today? What are the expenses today? It's a simple subtraction problem, and it's going to produce what is known as the net operating income. So let's say we bump into a property, I find it, and grandma's running it. It's a mom and pop facility, 30 years old, looks a little worse for wear, but she's full, and so she's happy, but she wants to move to Florida, whatever the example might be. Seller motivation in this industry is the same as it is with any of the sellers that you guys have talked to when you're buying single family houses, right? Death, divorce, disease, dislocation. Let's say it's bringing in $100,000. And she says, and it's great because it only costs us $50,000 to run the property. So I make $50,000 every year. I'm going to go, cool. $100,000 minus 50,000 gives us an NOI of 50K. Now, right now, who's familiar with cap rates? Raise your hands if you're semi-familiar with cap rates. And okay, so a good number of you, those that aren't on camera, maybe not, but that's okay. I'm going to keep this very simple. We're not going to get into a big discussion unless you guys ask again later about cap rates. But generally speaking, a cap rate is the return on investment that you would receive, assuming you bought the property with all cash. And so we use the cap rate to turn this net operating income, the $50,000 that we just talked about, into a value, a projected value for the property, or in this case, an as-is value, because it's actually making 100. They're actually spending 50, which means there's $50,000 in NOI. I'm going to multiply that to get a as-is value by 12.5. The other way to get it, that same number, is to divide by 0.08. 0.08 is the cap rate that I'm using just because of my knowledge of the market and because it's my hypothetical example and I can make up an 8 cap. But that's a pretty good number. Properties are trading in that range right now in most of the markets that we operate in. So someone help me with the math. 50K times 12.5 is 425,000. That's what the property's worth as it sits today based on the income it's generating. Would I pay that? Maybe, maybe not. To address the underwriting, what I'm going to do is look at what could the property be worth, knowing what I know about the market. Now, again, I'm not suggesting I'm going to pay what it could be worth, but I need to know what it could be worth, my after repair value, right? We might call that in the storage world the after optimized value, because we're not just repairing the physical property and then selling it based on what the comps say. We're repairing it physically, but we're also doing an operational overhaul. We're implementing systems that allow us to run these properties completely remotely with what's known as an unmanned management strategy. There's a 3-pronged approach that I'm happy to share with you guys. But getting back to our example, based on the current income, it's worth 425K. Well, I may look at that property and I'm only going to be interested, as I told you earlier, if I can double or triple it in value. So I need to get it up I either need to buy it for very little, or I need to know that I can add lots of value, or a combination of both. And so let's say I look at the market, I do a quick rent comparison. I see how this property stacks up against the competitors. I see that maybe there aren't as many competitors as there should be. We look at supply and demand, which is based on population. And I go, you know what? This property as it sits today should be renting for, and this isn't an absurd example, $150K. We should be able to get rents up by 50%, right? So if it's renting for $150K when I'm done, she had expenses of $50K. And in this example, it just happens to work out that that's the same number I'm going to use, but I'm not using it because it's the number that she's spending. I think she was spending too much in expenses relative to the 100K. But I know that generally speaking, we can run these properties for about a third income to expense ratio. So a third of the income is going to go toward OpEx. So now we're going to subtract the 50K and we've got $100,000 net operating income. Can I get a couple of head nods just so I know we're still tracking a little bit? Yes. All right.
Yes.
Cool. So we've got our NOI of 100K and we're going to apply the same cap rate. 8. Which means multiplying by 12.5. If I do my math, it's 1.25 million. You guys tracking with me there?
Yeah, I think a lot of people are stunned by how fast those numbers grow, Mike.
Well, so the numbers grow fast, and I'm just going to be fully honest because I'm doing math in my head with 42 people either looking at me or at least seeing me. I'm trying to battle the demons. Like, is your number exactly right? If my numbers aren't exactly right, forgive me. The bottom line is the concept holds true and the formula works. Income minus expenses divided by cap rate. And now, as I say it out loud, I am comfortable with the 1.25 million projection. Now, here's the crazy part. We kept cap rate the same there, just for ease of simplicity. But the truth is, when you take an underperforming property that needs a lot of work to it, it's going to command, because there's work to be done, you're not going to be able to get the same cap rate. I'm likely to sell this property at a 7 cap instead of an 8 cap. And if that's the case, the value is closer to 1.4 million instead of 1.25. But that's a little bit in the weeds. The bottom line is what we're doing in storage is we are capitalizing on the exponential relationship between net operating income and value, because these properties sell at a multiple of the income that they bring in. So if you can increase that income, it's not a linear growth in value. And then on top of that, you get the compounding effect of what's known as cap rate compression. I mean, the cap rate goes down, so the value goes up even higher. And the profits become almost they start to fall into that category of it's too good to be true. And I get it. Like, that's the healthy skepticism that will serve you well. That's one of the reasons I built the Storage Rebellion, is because, like, there's no better proof or inspiration for people than to see that it actually works. And so when we get a bunch of people together, several of whom are on this call, I'm seeing Max and Scott and Joe and Gabe and Ryan and forgive me, Jonathan, and many others that I'm probably I can't see on my second screen, Brian, Sant, Chris Michaels. Like, these are all people that are available to, I hope, share with you the knowledge that I've in some form or fashion shared with them over the last several years. So anyways, Barrington, does that answer the question as far as a rough underwriting overview? It does. Okay, cool.
Yes,
cool,
yes,
cool.
it does. Thank you, Mike. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Brian
Mike,
asked
we see in the
regarding
chat. There you go. Good, you got it. Cool.
Yeah. Yep. Brian said, regarding the 72 days until auction, what happens to the customer stuff in the meantime? Are you able to change the lock to prevent access? Yes, we actually don't change the lock. We just add a second lock. All of our doors in the storage industry are designed with room for 2 latches, and they put one on and we put a second one on. And that's the beautiful thing. That's why lien laws in storage are so much better than eviction laws, because you have, as the landlord, they got you by the you know what's, excuse the verbiage, but they have your house and you're hoping they're going to pay you each month. And if they don't, how much power do you have? Not really. You can't go you can knock on the door. They don't have to answer. You can't go in. You can't harass them. Now, we don't harass people in storage either. But what we do is go, whoops, when you signed your agreement, you said you'd pay us this much. And if you didn't pay us, you authorized us to put an overlock on and terminate your access to the belongings. And so now we've got leverage. One of the things we also do is we put a fence around all our facilities, and we have an automated security gate. This is part of the management system, but it also enforces our collections. If you show up to one of my facilities and you're a customer and you happen to fall behind on rent, you're going to punch your code into the automated keypad that's supposed to open the gates and let you in, and it's going to beep at you. And then you're going to call us. And when I say us, I totally mean a call center that I've hired, not me. Although in the beginning it was me, and that's totally cool. And you're going to say, something's wrong with your gate. It won't open. And we're going to kindly remind you that there's nothing wrong with our gate. The only problem is that you haven't paid yet. And if you can pay, the gate will be restored within 3 minutes. And so you pay over credit card on the phone or on the internet, and 3 minutes later, you have access to your stuff again. And so that's the long-winded answer to, we restrict the access to their belongings. And if they ever want their belongings back, they have to pay us. And we automate a lot of that process through that security gate so that we don't have to be involved in the restriction and restoration of their access. Bree asks, in sending letters, you talk a lot about dining the manual finding. Hold on. Let me read quietly again while I just, okay. So I think what Bree's asking about is, excuse me, if we're going to be fine. All right. I've convinced you well enough that you should be looking for some storage. At the very least, you should be open to the idea of pursuing storage. And somebody might say, well, I want to go find one. How do I go find a deal? The short answer is you've got to talk to owners of facilities, and you've got to find owners of facilities that are open to the idea of selling, period. They don't have to want to sell. We don't ask, hey, will you sell me your facility? Because that's an easy thing to say no to. We ask questions like, and this is where, I'm going to put on my non-storage coaching hat, where I say that, good life principles are good business principles and vice versa. When we talk to people, we want to keep as many doors open as possible. So if I'm talking to a seller, it was, would you ever consider selling? Not, hey, do you want to sell to me? They're like, I don't know. I didn't even know I wanted to sell yet. But would you ever consider selling is much easier to say yes to than is the question, do you want to sell that property to me right now? Right. So little sidebar there. In order to talk to sellers, we need to find them. And Bree's asking about, should we just download a list? Should we buy a list from a list broker on the internet, or how do we go about doing that? My bias is always toward, I shouldn't say always, generally toward building your own list. And I'll share with you guys exactly how I would have you do that. If you said, I want to start today, how do I do it? I'll give you the information that you need to get going. It's the same information I gave Chris Michaels several years ago. And within 18 months, I think, ballpark, he had bought 3 facilities. He had contracted and wholesaled off 2 of them. And then the third one I told you about, he and I bought and sold and tripled the money in 27 months. The exact same process that I'll share with you. That said, I want to first tell you why I think building a list is better. If you buy a list, the list provider is selling that list to everybody else. And storage has been a really hot commodity lately. I like to think the storage rebellion contributed to that, but that might be some delusions of grandeur. The bottom line is COVID did a lot for our industry, because when COVID happened and landlords weren't allowed to evict and people weren't allowed to go to the office and everyone started buying everything online, all of the people who invested into habitational real estate, office space, retail, went, oh man, the government just reached in and put a little bit of a chokehold on us. This isn't good. In storage, the government kept its hands off us. Thank you. And lots of people, there was a drive in demand for storage. One of the beautiful things about storage is that our demand, we have both positive economic drivers of demand, meaning when life is good and everybody's getting rich in America, what do? We buy a bunch of crap, and we're hoarders, so we don't want to get rid of our old crap. So we just put the old crap in a garage down the street, i.e. my storage facility. When the economy is going down, sadly, people are forced to downsize from a 3-bedroom house to a 2-bedroom apartment. And while they will, as necessity requires, tighten the belt a little bit, they're never going to get rid of Tommy's, gold-plated bowling shoes or whatever the heck it is that people save from their kids, right? Like, they have sentimental value and they're going to keep them, but they don't fit in their new, smaller house. So they're going to move it into a storage facility. All of that to say, there's a lot of people interested in storage right now, right? And if you're buying your list, you have a lot of competition. The other thing is you're at the mercy of the quality of the list. And my preferred strategy is to buy properties that are experiencing problems, right? We as real estate investors get paid to solve problems. I want to find storage facilities. I don't want the storage facilities that are doing everything right. That doesn't do me anything. There's no opportunity. One, there's a lot of downside risk because if things turn south, I haven't been able to add force appreciation. But two, it's like I can't add any value. I'm just at the mercy of the market going up, which it may or may not do. And so, excuse me. What I want to do is find the properties that have issues. And in this day and age, I don't know a bigger issue than a self-storage facility. It's November of 2023 that isn't listed on Google. If the owner doesn't have their property properly listed on the internet, just imagine how much other crap they're doing woefully wrong, right? Like, that's the easiest thing in the world to do. And it's the single most important thing for us as storage operators to do. All we're trying to do is be the first person a storage customer finds when they decide they need storage. I'm not trying to convince anybody, hey, you should really get a storage unit. Like, I tried that in the early days. It doesn't work. They're going to determine when they have the need. But when they do determine that, you want to be the first person they find. And then when they raise their hand and reach out to you, you want to solve their problem as quickly, easily, and affordably as possible. Convenience is king. And so the DIY model of being able to jump on the internet, if you guys go to DillonStorageCenter.com right now, you'll see my website. You don't ever have to see my ugly face to rent a unit at my facility. And I hope you don't, because I don't want to be involved in that process. And if you need to talk to somebody, you're going to call the call center and they're going to help you through that. Bringing these unsophisticated properties that aren't listed on the internet, that have somebody sitting in the office, an employee, and overpaying them, eliminating those inefficiencies is why we get paid. And so I want to build the list because I want to be having conversations with people that, no offense, none of you know about yet because I built my list. Does that make sense? Hopefully. Here's how we build the list. And I'm going to run through this pretty quickly. But here's how it works. If you said to me, I want to buy, look, Dan and Jeff are in Rochester, New York. I think they're a Dan and Jeff that I went to high school with, if I'm not mistaken. And they're saying yes. So there you go. If they said, Mike, I want to buy my first property, but I want to buy it locally because, we believe you when you say that it's smarter, it's easier and cheaper to get smart locally than it is from afar. There are a lot of reasons not to invest in New York State. I don't own any properties in New York State anymore. Primarily taxes and snow. Now, that doesn't mean you shouldn't buy in New York State to start with, because if you buy locally, you don't have to solve for the issue of absolute remote management. And if there is an issue that you need to address, you don't have to get on a plane and fly 1,000 miles to Florida to look at your property. And even if you don't ever buy a property in New York, it makes sense to look in New York initially, because you're going to have to kick a bunch of tires and look at a bunch of properties, a bunch of not deals in order to get to your first deal, most likely. Unless you're Chris Lawrence, who signed up for the Storage Rebellion and a week later, I'm not taking any credit for it, he bought a $1 million+ facility and doubled it in value in like the first 12 months. He's literally his 5th cold call, he found a deal. I'm not guaranteeing that. I'm not promising it. I'm just telling you it does happen. What I'm about to share with you is it's going to sound too simple to be effective. I want you to suspend that judgment, because this process is the exact process I shared with Chris Michaels, and he contacted less than 300 people and got 3 deals, made hundreds of thousands of dollars in the process. So it doesn't need to be fancy to work. Dan and Jeff are going to jump on Google and they're going to go, let's say they decide we'll shop in all of New York. That's good enough for us. Or they could narrow it down to a smaller radius if they wanted. But we're just going to use, for simplicity's sake, the state of New York. I would Google New York State towns ranked by population. And the first listing is going to be a list of every town in New York, from Manhattan at the top to Podunk, New York, in the middle of the Adirondacks, with 38 people in it. What I'm then going to have you do is delete all of the towns with more than, you have to pick your number, but I'm going to say 5,000 people. You can always do this search again and add the towns from 5,000 to 10,000 later. But I'm going to get rid of every big town bigger than 5,000 people. I'm also going to get rid of every town smaller than 1,000 people. And then I'm going to start with the town of 1,000 people. And I'm going to pop that into, so let me back up and say, now you've got your list. It's on page 1 of an Excel spreadsheet. Small towns ranked in order. Then I'm going to take the smallest town. I'm going to go back to Google and I'm going to put Podunk, New York, self-storage. And what's going to pop up is, you guys are familiar with the map pack, right? So right at the very top, there's going to be a map with 1 or 2 little red dots on it. That's going to say Timmy's storage joint and Pack Rat storage or whatever. You're just going to take the information from those 2 locations. So Timmy's storage joint, address, phone number, website, if there is one. The hint is, or the hope is, that there isn't going to be a website, right? And then we're going to have a couple columns beside that basic identifying information. Does it have a website? Yes or no? Does it have a does it have a website? Yes or no? And is the website functional? Yes or no? When I say functional, I mean fully functional. I can rent a unit, completely automated, not call this number to rent a unit, not submit this form to rent a unit, but like I can click buttons to sign my lease and get an access code and move in. And I can pay for a move-in and I can move out of my unit. I want to be able to do everything on the internet. If I can't do that, then it's not fully functional. The other column is going to say, does it have a Google listing? Now, here's the shortcut. If it had a red dot in the map pack, then it at least has a Google listing. So you're going to say yes to that. You've done that for the 2. The next step is critically important. It's the harder step. It takes longer, but it is where the gold is most likely to be found. And so you can't skip it. You're now going to open up the aerial view of Google. You're going to zoom in. You go to satellite view so that you're looking at the buildings rather than, the generic map. And you're literally going to, you guys have heard of driving for dollars. We do this in the landlord space. We just drive around and look for properties that seem like they might be what we're looking for. Overgrown grass, shuttered windows, whatever the case may be. This is all we're doing, except we're flying for dollars in the storage space, and we're using Google so we can do it from the comfort of our office. We're going to fly over and just literally scan this small town of 1,000 people. And one of the reasons we're starting with a small town is, 1, because there's a lot of potential there. But 2, the process that I'm describing right now, as well as several of the processes that we use to assess the viability of the deal, comparing, a market analysis, competition, those sorts of things. It's easier to do in small towns than bigger towns. So all we're doing is learning with training wheels here before we get out and ride our bike on the freeway. The best part of it is you can win the race on these training wheels. I bought a property in Bronson, Florida. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Florida, but it's like right around the corner from meth country. I'm lying. It's dead center in meth country, Florida, like Northwest Florida. 1,030 people, Bronson, Florida. You can look it up. I think there's 1,030 people in the town. I bought it for $465,000. 3 years later, I sold it for $1.5 million. You don't need big towns. This is where storage kind of varies from some of the age-old adages of real estate investing. Location, location, location. That holds true in storage, but for different reasons. It's location relative to our competitors and the densest populated places. We don't need to be on the corner of Main Street. That's where McDonald's belongs. People go to McDonald's every day. People only go to their storage facility a couple times a year. We can be on the outskirts of town, but we need to be more convenient to those people than any of our competitors. You can tell I just go stream of consciousness. I end up all over the board. I hope you guys are tracking with me. We're going to go back to building our list. We've gone through, I think where we left off is we were flying around town looking for the facilities that Google doesn't know about. So these are very stereotypical, long, skinny row buildings. As you practice this will be very easy. I can't fly in an airplane without seeing every freaking storage facility until we get up above the clouds. There's almost like an aura around them, and I'm not kidding. Like they pop out to you once you start looking for them. And I know that makes you wonder if, the long hair I have came with a joint this morning too. I promise it didn't. Like, it's your reticular activating system. It is part of your brain, which causes you to notice things that you're looking for, right? You've had this example when you bought a black Prelude with awesome white stripes on it, and you thought it was the only one, and then all of a sudden everybody owns a freaking Prelude. It's not that everybody went out and bought a Prelude, it's that you're seeing every cool Prelude now, right? And so as we look around, we're going to identify these properties, and these are the ones that we want to put an asterisk next to in our Excel spreadsheet. What we're going to do is get as much information as we can. Now, there's no Google listing. So in order to get the address, you might be guessing. You might have to get down to Street View and look directly at the facility and see that it says, 58 on the corner of one of the buildings, and it's 58, Lehigh Street or whatever. There might be a sign with a phone number. That phone number might no longer work. Like, this is where you become a detective, and you literally got to roll up your sleeves and track down the owner of this facility. You can get enough information. Usually if you get the address, then you can get onto the real estate GIS Street or Encore, any of the databases that you guys might use to kind of manually skip trace your property owners. And then you're going to make contact with them. My encouragement is build that list, get to 200 at a minimum, 200 facilities, and then just start calling them or mailing to them, or preferably a combination of both. That was the longest answer ever to Bree's question of, do I do it manually or build it myself? But hopefully there was some extra nuggets built in there. I recommend building it yourself unless you can't. The bottom line is all of us either right now have either more time than money, or we have more money than time. If you're really busy, but you got a boatload of money, then yeah, you can buy a list and afford to waste the money that's wasted when you send to a bunch of people that were never going to sell to you anyways, or when you lose the deal to other competing investors. Like, that's fine. You're taking the what we call the shotgun approach. You're just sending 10,000 mailers out and getting a bunch of calls back and then weeding through those. What I just described is my preference because I've seen it work really, really well, and embedded in it is a forced learning that I think all of us as we're getting started can benefit from. But it's the rifle approach where you're just finding properties and aiming directly at it. If you hit it, great. If you don't, at least you're somewhere near it. You've been playing with it. You've been talking to sellers. You're starting to learn the lingo, and you're that much better off because of it. Hopefully that makes sense. Jonathan, I'm going to come to you, brother, because you have your hand up, and then we'll pop back into the chat and to Gabriel and all that good stuff.
Hey, Mike. So, first off, I want to say I love that approach with the driving for dollars aspect. That's how I built my first list. And I'm pretty sure it's how it's how I found the facility that I bought back in September. So what I will say is for folks that have kind of a lack of time and a little bit of money type thing, I still recommend building your own list. But if you don't have time to skip trace it, farm that out. There's people all over Fiverr and other. I mean, all you have to do is Google skip trace and you'll find it. So if you can get an address or a phone number or something, just farm that part out, because that's part of the reason why it took me so long to really start getting traction. Was I think I didn't send out my first mailers until I'd been in the Storage Rebellion for 4 months or something, solely because it took me that long to find phone numbers and addresses and whatnot.
That's great advice. Yeah, that's awesome, Jonathan. I appreciate you shining a light on that. And the truth is, all of this, even the building the list, can ultimately be farmed out. But I'm a big believer in doing it yourself first, so you don't get taken advantage of, or probably more realistically, so that you don't end up going astray down the line, right? Like when I go into a car shop, I don't know how to change my brakes, but I know enough about rotors and calipers to ensure that I'm not likely to get ripped off by the guy who does know how to change brakes, right? That's the same kind of process we're going through here. I don't run my facilities anymore. I have a third-party management company, or I have partners who do it. But I didn't start there. I did it myself first to get smart. And then as soon as you feel comfortable, Jonathan's right, farm it out to somebody else, because the bottom line is, this is, if we're using virtual assistants to do this, this is $6 to $12 an hour work. And as a storage investor, your hourly wage sure as heck better be better than that, right? So all this is, we're doing this for the education, and we happen to get some results, but as soon as we know how to do it, we farm it out to somebody else. Absolutely true. Gabe, let's come to you, brother.
Well, thanks, Mike. Thanks for being on, dude, and congratulations on your future baby.
Thanks, buddy.
Mike, the question is, in today's what's going on today in the market and what have you, and the demand for storage, I want to know what your students and the people in the SRU community are facing with cold calling, mailing, whatever type of marketing you're doing in calling these off-market properties. Because I'm finding two things. The first thing I'm finding is that when I call these off-market owners, they're telling me I'm the 10th caller, get in line, I'm not selling. Number two is that when I get someone that wants to sell a property, because of the demand, they want to sell at crazy cap rates. Like I had a guy 3 weeks ago, 27,000 square foot facility in Bridgeport, Illinois, middle of nowhere. His NOI was like $60,000. I think Scott and I were going to offer him like $550 or something like that cash. He's like, no, I want to sell for 1.4. I'm like, are you high? I'm like, what's wrong with you? I'm sorry. But I mean, 4 cap, it's like these people, because they know that everyone's calling, like, well, you know what? I'm going to sell for whatever I want now. So my question is, how do you overcome these challenges I know you got to ramp up the calling and get that, I get all that. That's fine. But how do you overcome the challenges to that person that says, one, get in line, or two, when they want to sell for like crazy, stupid cap rates that not even the market right now is where it's at? Because that's the two things I'm finding today in all the calls I'm making. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's a great question. The truth is, Gabe, you just answered your own question in that, like, what are you seeing, right? I think that's what many of my students are seeing as well. And there are a couple things I want to add to what you just shared. And that is, like, people who want way more than their property's worth. We can't really blame them, because for the last 3 years, there've been a lot of people paying owners way more than their property was worth. Like, I'll be the first to admit that of all the money I've made in storage in the last 12 years, I probably earned half to 3/4 of it. That's being generous. And the other half or quarter of it was just dumb luck. It's just, I rode a wave. Like, I got in and I rode the wave to the top. And we've been at the peak of a market, believe it or not, since 2017. They've been saying we've been at the peak and it's about to come down. It's about to come down. I truly think now, after we've come out of COVID, we're seeing the signs where the market is coming down. So we're actually, for the first time, entering what I believe is a buyer's market, where the buyer is ultimately got the stronger position over the seller. For the last several years, it's been a seller's market, no doubt about it. That's why I've been selling all my properties, because I could get more than they were worth, as far as, I would consider. The challenge is, none of the sellers are willing to admit that we're no longer in a seller's market yet. There just hasn't been enough time. So the very unsatisfying answer, one of them that I'm going to give you, is patience is part of this. Like, we've got to, like any real estate, they're only going to sell when they feel enough pain, right? Is it Tony Robbins who said that change will happen when the pain of staying the same eclipses the pain of changing? They don't want to change necessarily until they feel a certain amount of pain. And though the market has turned, they may not be there yet. And so you might just have to wait. And that's where I think the most important answer I can give you is relationships matter. So believe me, and I know you've never asked a seller, are you high? I know you wouldn't do that. And I want to point out for anybody else that our success depends on helping other people succeed. So this guy wants to sell his property. Now he is high and he wants to sell it for way more than he ever will be able to. But if we want to help him succeed, part of that might be helping him come to understand what his property is worth, what it could be worth. The truth is, we might need to help him. He thinks he wants $1.4 million. He doesn't want $1.4 million. And some of you are going to push back on this. I was always going to be the $20 million storage guy. That was my goal for a long time. What I now understand is I never wanted $20 million. I wanted what? I wanted the feelings and the experience that I thought $20 million would give me. And trust me, I don't know $20 million, but having more money does give you, freedom and experiences, etc. But it doesn't give you all the feelings you think it will. Similarly, for your seller, if he has a genuine problem that he wants to solve, it's your relationship with him that is going to drill down to what the actual problem is, because he's going to tell you the problem is I don't have $1.4 million and I want it. That's not the real problem. The problem is he's scared he won't be able to pay his bills, or maybe he thinks I need $1.4 million so that I can invest it at 7% and that'll give me this amount of money per year into my retirement. Well, we can maybe solve that problem without giving him $1.4 million. We might be able to do some sort of joint venture, collaboration, master lease option, all sorts of creative ideas that might allow us to solve his problem without giving him the 1.4 million that he thinks he wants. Does that make sense? And I know it's not a concrete answer. This is something we could bounce around for hours talking about the nuances of relationships. But I think what I want you to understand is, how do you beat the other 10 guys that called him first? Well, clearly they weren't able to solve your problem, Mr. Seller. Otherwise, we wouldn't be on the phone. Right? So now you've already, in that statement alone, those 9 people no longer matter. He presented them to you because he wanted you to fight against him. And you just immediately neutralized that, took all the power out of that idea by saying, well, you would have sold to them if they could have solved your problem. So why are you talking to me? Well, they wouldn't pay me 1.4. Is that the real problem? And then you can have that conversation. And I just had a student, this is going to turn all of you off, and that's okay because I'm not here to sell anything. I just had a student buy a deal after 963 days from first contact with a seller. That's crazy. I bought a deal in Bloomfield at the corner of 5 and 20 and 444 after 18 months from first contract. It was a year until I contracted and then 6 months till I closed. And so this isn't get rich quick. This isn't overnight. You know that, Gabe. You've been doing it. You've done enough of it. And so this is where numbers come into play too. Like, you can't put all your eggs in one basket and just chase one property in hopes that it works out sometime in the next 3 years. You've got to establish relationships with as many potential sellers as possible. Steal the cliche analogy, you put as many lines in the water as possible, hoping that you catch one fish. All right, let's jump over just so we're tracking here. Scott, I do have to jump off right at 10:30. I've got a coaching call coming up after this, but I want to get through as many of these as possible. How are we financing deals? Great question, Barrington. It depends. As a coach, I say it depends a lot. My rule is, if I say it depends, I have to say what it depends on. So clearly it depends on your situation. One of the things we do when students come into our program is we talk to them about what are your objectives? What are your goals? I believe I can help anybody get rich in storage. I'm just not willing to. Our tagline is we use ordinary garages to create extraordinary lives. And then my behind the scenes hope is that those extraordinary lives are applied to do a lot of good in the world. So getting rich to go to Vegas and blow a bunch of that's not my game. We're not going to play it. So I can't control what people do with the riches they make. But when they come and want one-on-one time with myself or our coaches within the program, we're very clear that we need to know what the why is. And it doesn't have to be our why. It doesn't have to be the same. It might be any number of things. And as long as it's humanity plus, we're cool, right? So now we're going to come up with the objectives. What are the goals? What are we trying to achieve here? Is that really what we want to achieve? Cool, we're there. Now, an inventory of resources. How much time do you have? How much money do you have for a down payment? Or can you purchase cash? What do you have as far as a network goes? Resources, people you can tap into that would invest with you, partnership opportunities, all of the resources. And then we're going to design our strategy around those goals and those resources. So I can't really tell you how are we going to finance a deal because I don't know you specifically, Barrington, right? Or enough about you anyways. That said, the sky is the limit. And what I always tell people is don't allow the funding or financing question to stop you from finding the deal, because the bottom line is if you find a deal that's good enough, you will find the funding. Chris Michaels found a great deal, but in order to get that great deal, we had to pay $400,000 all cash. He didn't have access to that amount of money at that time. And so he said, hey, Mike, look at this deal. I'm thinking about wholesaling it. I might make 40 or 50 grand. And I said, well, that you could do that if you want. And I love you, Chris, but that's stupid because this property is going to be worth somewhere between $900,000 and $1 million when we're done. And then we got lucky and it was worth 1.2. He didn't let the fact that he didn't know how he would fund a deal stop him from going out and finding the deal. That's one of the reasons I built the Storage Rebellion community, is because very infrequently does one person have every piece of the puzzle. That's even true for me. I've been doing this for 12 years. I don't have all the resources needed to go buy my next storage facility. Why? Because I lack the desire to go shop for my next storage facility. Quite frankly, I don't need one. I've got my 4th kid on the way. I don't want to build the list that I just described to you. I've already done it. So I'm now in a position where I lack a very needed resource if I want to continue to grow my portfolio. The Storage Rebellion community is a place where people with limitations on their resources meet other people that have different limitations, and they combine those resources to create collaborative wins. It's basically FFREIA for storage nerds, right? Right. And so relationships become key. I know that doesn't really answer the question, but it's probably as best I can do with the time we have.
And what you said about if you find a deal, you'll find the money. Caitlin had a question in here. Maybe been directed to me, but you know, I'm like, it's what we always say. If you find a deal, you're gonna find the money. We'll find the money. But yeah, I see Caitlin has a question, and man, we really appreciate your time, Mike. I know you have a hard stop at 10:30, but yeah, we'll hammer through these and then we'll do a little wrap up. We end at 10:30, but Joe and I'll stay on for a little bit longer. Probably Gabriel too. You know, we have some experience at the self-storage thing, not as much as Mike's, but yeah. Do you see a question from Caitlin in there, Mike?
I do. Yeah, Caitlin, it's a great question. When it's as is, it's as is. So I just take the numbers at their value. And that number doesn't mean much to me. I'm not going to offer based on that number. I just need to know as like, based on what it is, I want that as my anchor point. The truth is the projected stabilized value is far more important to me. So when I calculate my offer, it has very little to do with the as is offer. I'm sorry, with the as is value. My offer is going to be reverse engineered from the projected stabilized value. Here's what I think it could be worth. Obviously, I'm going to be realistic and err on the side of being conservative when I calculate that number. At the same time, I'm going to understand that if I'm conservative with every freaking assumption I make, I'm going to pencil myself out of every deal. And so I look to, as I'm projecting out that finalized value, I envision a scale. And if I'm a little aggressive with, let's say, my rental rates in the market, then I'm going to be a little conservative with my ramp up, which means how fast do I think I'm going to fill it up? Right. And so I want to counterbalance each assumption so that in the end, the bottom line is every assumption I make is going to be wrong. It's a good life lesson too. Every assumption you make is going to be wrong. You're not going to get it perfect. You're always going to miss the mark. The key is to not miss the mark by a lot. And if you miss the mark high, your next shot should miss the mark low, so that the net result after you get to the bottom of your spreadsheet is as accurate as possible. The line items, as far as how much your expense is going to be, how much income can I get? You're going to be either too high or too low on how much income you think you can get. And you're going to be, if you're too high on income, then you want to make sure you're guessing so that you think you'll be too low on each expense. And then at the bottom, it's all going to equal out in the wash. Hopefully that makes sense. But what we do to reverse engineer is, here's the stabilized value. It's going to be worth 1 million when we're done. Well, all I'm going to do is look at how much time, energy, and additional money am I going to have to invest into this property? And how much risk do I have to endure? Once I know the answers to those questions, I can simply start putting a price on each of them, right? If it's going to be worth 100 grand, but I know it's going to be a heavy lift and it's going to take a lot of time, and I'm not completely certain that I'll actually get all the way to 1 million, all of those things are going to bring my offer down to 500K. Whereas if I'm really confident in all my assumptions, all I got to do is like buy it and plug in my software in my call center, turn on the marketing, and I'm done. Like, I don't have to do a lot of work and there's no competition. So I'm confident that at the very least, I'm going to hit my $1 million projection and I might get to 1.2. Well, then am I willing to pay 800 for that same property? Yeah. It really just comes down to being compensated adequately for that which you have to endure to take it from whatever it is today to what you think it could be. Now, one side note is, this is true for me as every bit as it's true for you, except I don't have maybe as much of an appetite as many of you do. One of the benefits of taking one of the non-financial value that I receive from turning around a property is the experience and education and knowledge of turning around the property. And so it stands to reason that I might have really high expectations. Like, I cherry pick. I'm not doing very many deals. If I can't double or triple in value, I don't want to do it. Well, that's not because I wouldn't learn something. It's just like, I'm not all that hungry to learn something about storage right now. I got other things going on. But you guys, if you're hungry, then yeah, account for the fact that sure, I might only make 100 or 200 grand over the next 2 or 3 years, which isn't going to change my life necessarily, or maybe it will, who knows? But even if it's not, the knowledge that you acquire through going through the process, through doing what I call eating your shit sandwich, doing shit that's below your hourly wage because it's good for you, well, that could be the part that changes your life. You don't want to hold out for the home run deal if it prevents you from gaining the experience that will allow you to really make the changes you're seeking. Hopefully that makes sense. That kind of answers, I think, are you making an offer on as is performing? Cool. I nailed Tom's question too. Carl Weeks, great question. Is this market type oversaturated with buyers yet? And are there still endless
Yes, it
deals?
is, Carl. Carl, you don't want to get in the business. No.
You don't want to do this, Carl. It doesn't work. Trust me. No, it's a great question. And I can hit it from 2 points. One, is it oversaturated from buyers, which is the question Carl asked. So that's what I'll answer first. But also, is storage the product an oversaturated commodity in American culture or in Rochester, New York, or whatever. So let's hit both of those. I said earlier, Carl, and I think this applies here too, we don't allow whether or not there are too many buyers, right? That's a commentary on the market itself. We don't allow that to dictate personally if we invest. We allow it to color how we invest. And so the short answer is yes, there are more buyers today than there's ever been. There's also more storage than there's ever been. There are more transactions than there's ever been in an exponential way. And there's also plenty of opportunity for those who know where to look. And that's a lot of what we've been talking about today. So there are not endless deals out there, but there are plenty of deals out there. And one of the key components to finding those deals is understanding what I'm about to share next. And that is, this is a micro market industry. So national trends are good to be aware of, but they don't mean very much, right? Like, the bottom line, to answer your first question again, Carl, there might be too many buyers, but there aren't too many buyers in meth country, Florida. And so that's where I went and I made a boatload of money doing it, right? There are underserved markets with plenty of opportunity left in them. And that same thing holds true when we look at national trends about storage. Is like, wow, storage has had a boom. Well, after the boom comes the bust. Like, it's oversaturated. You can't do that where I live because there's too much. There's been 6 new storage facilities put up. They go up on every corner. It's just, I missed the boat on this one, Mike. Okay, well, yeah, maybe you can't do it in that neighborhood. But what we do is we move from, if you guys are familiar with the analogy, that red ocean That's where all the sharks are already eating all the fish and there's blood in the water and it's chaos. We go over to the blue ocean, this little pocket, again, I use the example, in a small town in Florida, where yes, the national average, nationally speaking, there's too much storage because there's been overdevelopment. But none of that overdevelopment happened in Bronson, Florida. And so there is a little pocket of people that need storage every bit as much as they ever have, and no one's there serving that need. And so that's what we do as investors, is we seek out those opportunities and capitalize on them. Hopefully that makes sense. Given the number of big and small investors that have jumped into self-storage market in the last 5 years, have you seen an updated statistic on the percent of storage facilities mom and pop owned? Yeah, it's a good question. I don't know. I don't have an exact number. 5 years ago, they said that 85% of the market was still mom and pop owned. I'm going to say that number is probably in the 65 to 70% range now. It depends. You can look, Google it, and find different answers. But the answers are they're only as good as the data that's studied to provide the answers. I promise you, sorry, I heard a little echo there. The list building activity that I gave you today will allow you to discover a whole bunch of properties that aren't in any of the statistics about what percentage are mom and pop owned. Like if Google doesn't know about it, neither do the people that are putting those studies together. Right? They're not even, I don't want to say big enough, because sometimes they're larger properties. They're just in so small markets that nobody knows about them. So I don't put too much stock on the stats themselves. That may be a blind spot, but who knows?
Leslie had a good question there. Might be a harder question to answer, but do you see it in there?
Can you tell us about your losses? Yes, or my loses. Sure. The first thing I'll say is, fortunately, because I'm here still preaching, none of them have been catastrophic, but that doesn't mean that they didn't feel very catastrophic when I was going through them. My first facility in Syracuse, when I bought it, I had break-ins, 8 break-ins. It was December, about a week before Christmas. So 2 months after I bought it, and someone broke in. And dude, if the sky was ever falling, it was then. I literally slept there. Like, why? I don't know. It's still ridiculous. But like, my amygdala was hijacked and I was in fight or flight. But like, I literally slept on a concrete floor in this office with unfolded U-Haul boxes as my pillow for 2 nights in a row, because I didn't want it to happen again. And I was convinced that when news got out, that everybody was going to move out. The sky was falling. And what I now recognize is I was experiencing something known as catastrophizing, where I was taking a legitimate problem and pretending that it was not only permanent and going to ruin everything, but that it was far more widespread than it actually was. Ultimately, that guy tried to sell one of the guns he found in one of our units at the state fair to an plainclothes police officer, and he spent a lot of time in jail as a result. He may or may not be out by now because he had several other felonies. So that was chaotic. Like, this isn't all rainbows. I'm doing a conversion project. We don't have time to get into it, but a conversion project down in South Carolina where I took the proceeds from all of the sales of my property, and I moved them into what's known as a qualified opportunity zone fund. Just allowed me to defer the capital gains. I then I put about $2 million in. I've so far spent about 1.3 million of that, converting a 70,000 square foot warehouse property, 2 different warehouses on the same property, into storage. So this is like if you took a Kmart and converted it into storage. The storage units are inside the building. One of the buildings climate controlled, the other is not. Well, the non-climate controlled building, I installed a $250,000 storage kit inside of it to then go visit it, to find that the entire building was as wet inside as if it had been raining inside the building. So of course I thought, I went weeks working with my coach around the idea that I had just lost $1 million. I'm like, I'm sunk. This is terrible. Long story short, I learned a lot. We learned that if water's coming in through the walls and roof, that'll create a lot of moisture issues inside. We learned that even once you solve those in the humidity of the South, ventilation is important. So we installed a $20,000, 20,000 cubic foot per minute ventilation system that's controlled by a humidistat. And we've done $50,000 worth of drainage work to lower the water table on the property because it was built 18 inches lower than it should have been. And so the water didn't drain well and it would touch the underside of the slab. And so water would seep up through the bottom of the concrete. It was pouring down through the roof and it was just in the air because of the humidity. And so I literally went 6 weeks where I thought I had lost $1 million. And the only thing that helped me through it was one, having a really, really wise coach who was able to detach from the emotional experience that I was having, help me walk past the catastrophizing. Now, the truth is losing $1 million would suck. And I hope you guys take this in the spirit that I share it. Losing $1 million would suck. And that's not what I was so scared of. In my head, I was going to be broke. My wife was going to divorce me. I was going to be homeless and addicted to all the drugs and alcohol that I left behind 5 years ago. So, right, like this problem got really big and went beyond storage really quickly. And then my coach was like, dude, Wagner, listen, I want to ask you a question. If this happens and you lose the $1 million, would your wife and kids actually notice? And how would they notice? And I was like, well, shit. Financially, they wouldn't feel it. We had other storage properties that were making plenty of money. Like we did well enough in storage that I could lose $1 million and it wouldn't affect our day-to-day existence. Now, a big key to that truth is the fact that we live very modestly, despite the truck I'm about to show you. We live very humbly. We have a beautiful house, but we don't have a mortgage. We have nice vehicles, but we don't make payments on them. Like, we live in such a way where we don't need to make money next month to continue living this way. So that said, he said, will your wife and kids even notice? I said, well, aside from living with a grumpy asshole for a little bit, they're really not going to feel it. And what that allowed me to do was shift my mentality to, well, how fortunate am I that I've got myself in a situation where I could lose $1 million and my wife won't feel it. Now, what did that do? It didn't change the fact that I had a big issue down in South Carolina, but I stopped beating myself up for being a schmuck and buying this property I never should have bought and thinking I know more than I am and blah, 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 and the self-judgment and criticism. And I shift to, you know what? I'm pretty damn good at this stuff. And yeah, I screwed up, but I've got what it takes to figure it out. And so I'll figure it out. And so that was a really long-winded way, Leslie, to answer your question. My hope is what you take out of that is this is not get rich quick. You're going to bump into shit that you don't want to bump into. And that's part of the gift. Like, if we can view our challenges and the things, like saying to my buddy the other day, right? Like love or fear, you have to choose one. And if we have to choose, we'll all choose love. But the bottom line is the fear we experience is the thing against which we sharpen our ability to love. Same way, when we're in storage, I want just profits. I just want money raining down on me. But when shit hits the fan and things get hard, that's where I hone the skills that allow me to make money rain down later. And so you've got to embrace the challenges to the greatest extent possible for what they are. And I know that's a lot easier said than done, but hopefully it makes sense. And with that, guys, I do got to run here. If anybody's interested, certainly you can email me at mike@thestoragerebellion.com. Full disclosure, that email does not come to me directly. Until it does. Many of them find their way to me, but we might be redirecting you if you have questions that we've already answered. I'm big, I told you in the beginning, on stewardship. Another way to say that is efficiency. All of what I shared with you today, we've recorded in video and then 10X. Chris Michaels and I put together a course that we're happy to share with you. We have a free version. We have a paid version. Clearly start with a free version. That would be dumb to skip past that. If it's free, take it, extract as much juice as you can. Maybe it's enough, and it has worked for many other people to send you on your way and you never have to pay us a dime. If you get to the point where you're like, well, I want to do this and I want to invest some money into my education, then we're here for that too. But that's the extent of my sales pitch. So hopefully that was valuable, guys. I appreciate your time and attention. I know time is the only resource that you never get back when you spend it. And I don't take the fact that you spent the last 90 minutes with me lightly. And so thank you very much. I appreciate it. And hope to cross paths with many of you. I know I will, because I know many of you. Those that I don't, I hope our paths do cross at some point.
Thank you, Mike.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Mike. Thanks for
Mike,
joining.
yeah,
Respect
appreciate
Mike's time.
Mike,
Yeah, everybody
thanks,
take
Mike.
yourself off mute. Let's give Mike a big hand. Yeah. All right. Cool, Mike. Thanks, dude.
Thanks, Mike. Thank you. That was
Yep.
awesome.
And Mike, if if we could, we'd keep you here till 10:30 tonight. I know we will do questions, but appreciate you taking the time, brother.
All right. Thank you guys so much. I appreciate it. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it. Have a great day.
Okay. And anybody wants to stay on, like I said, I'll stay on for a little bit longer, about 10 more minutes myself. And if anybody has questions, you can ask them, or if anybody has input, appreciate everybody joining today. Great event. And just real glad I was able to grab Mike and put him on this call. We literally put this together yesterday. I have some people like, dude, if I had more notice, I would know. Like, we put it together yesterday, man. That's just how things work sometimes. But Mike's the man. I mean, he's there in Rochester, New York, and just real glad we're able to have him on. So
It's
does
recorded.
anybody have any questions for us?
It'll be on YouTube. There's the answer.
Ooh,
Awesome.
right.
You know, Scott, one of the observations that I had with Chris Michael's deal, in theory, let's just say they made around $800,000 profit in theory, without expenses and everything else. But in regards to a flipper, if you're averaging $40,000 a house, you'd have to do 20 houses versus that one deal. And then you think about.
You want to say that again, Joe?
No.
I want this recorded so Joe hears it and I can go to this point in the video. What was that again, Joe?
In regards to the example that Mike used, just to keep everything, simple, $800,000 on that one deal. And I don't know if it took them a year and a half, whatever. If you were to put that in relation to flipping a house, and it's to say you're averaging $40,000 per flip, net $40,000, it will take you 20 houses. You have to do 20 houses versus that one deal. And then I think about it is that, if you're, a lot of us are one-man operations or two-man, how long is it going to take for you to not only find those 20 properties, but then also to get through 20 flips, okay, versus doing one, okay.
Cool. Thanks. Anybody else, any other questions or input or anything? I know there's some other people on here that got storage experience too. Feel free to jump in if you want and tell your quick story about storage. Feel free. If not, we'll do Mike's favorite thing and just sit here and stare at each other awkwardly.
I'm sure there's people going through war stories right now, or going through stuff, especially in storage. We all do.
Is it bad that I've also been expanding my list?
That's fantastic.
Yeah, so one of the things that I took away from our previous retreat, thanks to Abby, was really kind of double down on the local area that I'm just purchased in. So I've been digging around that area. I actually got in contact with a guy that's got, it's another small facility, but it's got like 7 acres of land on it. So I'm still trying to figure out the numbers on that one. That one's probably the hardest thing that I'm running into, because it's only 50 units. So it's about 7,000 square foot, but it's got 2 warehouses and an apartment and 7 acres. The area is pretty much 100% full within a 10 square mile radius. So it's like, how do I really evaluate this to make an accurate offer? Because obviously you've got the square footage, but the acreage, then you're digging into, what's the market rate on the land and this, that, and the other. It's like, where do I evaluate it? Because this one would definitely be, I would chase this one as an expansion project.
Well, but Jonathan, have they given you a number?
Yes.
Is it crazy out of the realm in regards to what it's making right now? Do they want tomorrow's money today is what I'm asking.
So I haven't gotten the information on what he's actually making off of it right now. I've got the generic rental rates for the area, which is pretty much the same as what my facility is now. So I guess I should call him back and get that information, what he's actually making off of it. But based on that,
I mean, on what he's asking, price per square foot, how is it? Is it on the low end, the high end?
no, it's
Middle?
definitely on the upper end, but again, it's on 7 acres of prime property, which you would need minimal to no land prep to throw up some more buildings. Like, and I think that's where he's deriving some of the value. He's asking like just shy of 600 for it. So I don't think it's outlandish. I don't think the price that he's asking is outlandish. It's just, where is it? I mean, it's more along the lines of what do I do with it if I decide to chase it? Do I keep 3 acres and throw more facilities up and then sell 3 acres or 4 acres to try and fund some of it? Or you see what I'm saying there?
Yeah, at least you've got options.
Yeah, absolutely.
You just got to narrow it down. You're going to have to get the numbers from them, obviously.
Yeah. I should have did that when I had him on the phone. I don't know why I didn't.
And then negotiate them down. Start talking, I don't have to tell you,
Yeah, I'd say definitely call them back and get that information. So what you're saying is this facility is near one that you own, correct?
Yeah, it's about 10 miles away. So I wouldn't need a new boots on the ground guy. I wouldn't need a new website or any of that stuff. I just need a sign for it. And I can throw a new sign up and it'd be a second local facility.
Yeah, I would definitely jump on that. And here's a funny story for you. Mike Perkins, who I think is still on the call. He and I've been working together on a couple things, and he come about listing. He's like, "Hey man, found this listing. It's in Alabama. Looks like a decent deal. What do you think?" Blah blah blah. He's looking at it. I chuckle a little bit. I said, "Mike," I said, "I actually own that one." I said, "It is a decent deal, but I own that one." So, but the story gets better. Mike's like, "There's a storage facility right next to yours." I said, "Yeah, I know it is. They just bought it a little bit ago. We tried to buy it when we bought ours, but the lady was selling it, and these people just bought it. Like, you can give him a call if you want." Well, sure enough, the dude calls the person next door, like literally, like our storage facilities butt up against each other. There is a 50-foot right of way between the two of them. He calls them, talks to the people like, "Yeah, we own a few others. We've been thinking about selling one, and this is the one that we would sell." Now, mind you, they've only had this thing for like 2 years, a year and a half. Like, yeah, we would consider selling it. So Mike and we talked back and forth. And I said, "Hey, tell them this is the price." They tried to negotiate higher. Mike got this thing. And Mike literally went and looked at it this week. He went out there with Shane Chapin. They went out there, looked at it together. And we have it under contract. We're gonna buy it from Mike. We're gonna give him we're gonna work out a deal with him. Very excited. But I mean, it's right next door to our facility. So our cost to own that thing is greatly reduced. So it's, talk about a fun success story. That's my story about owning a facility close to yours.
Nice. So there's definitely a lot of benefits to doing that.
Right.
I mean, what would you guys think about the expansion aspect of it? That the area is extremely rural Kentucky. Like, I think you could cram 10 square miles and maybe find 50,000 people total. Like it is backwoods. So, with my first facility, I think I saw it was somewhere in the realm of like 4 or 5 square foot per head, but that was because the population was so low. I think within like three miles of my facility, there was 3,000 people, 3,500 people. So I feel like holding on to all 7 acres would be kind of pointless. Because I don't know that you could build that much facility and actually lease it up. I mean, what would y'all think on that one? Would you think more sell a good chunk of it, or
Well,
What about-
it also depends on what you get per square. I mean, per acre for the land. Is it gonna be worth it?
And also, what about outdoor storage, campers, boats, all that kind of stuff? Store some RVs, leave places to park them, give them some power so they can plug it in so their batteries don't die, and let them park their RVs there. Nobody's allowed to live there, but people are always looking for places to park stuff that they're not allowed to have in their yards because of HOAs and everything else.
That's not a bad idea either. Now, would you need to, gravel it or any of that stuff, or would you just?
Yeah,
I
You guys
probably
would
would.
recommend graveling it?
yeah,
Yeah,
you
I
want
would
people to get
probably put some
stuck
sort
in
of
the
run a
mud.
crush in there. Yeah, I would run a crush it for sure. You don't need to put pads in and make it like an actual camping park, but
It's not a bad
I
idea.
agree. That's nice thing about that is you can just do a little bit at a time. Number one. Number two, is any of it like road frontage? Because like with storage, you really don't need the road frontage, so you could sell that front for like a retail space. And
There's actually a good bit road frontage. There's road frontage on, so the back side of the property that's not on the main highway is pretty much road frontage on right next to a neighborhood. And then you have the main highway. I say the main highway, it's Highway 290. It's a tiny little highway, 2-lane road, but it's also right next to like the local electrical co-op. So I mean, yeah, I could definitely look at selling off, road frontage and just keeping that stretch to the actual facility itself. That's not a bad idea either.
Have you tried negotiating him down on the price? Was 600,000 was the price from the very start, or where did he start at?
Yeah, I haven't really contacted him back since then. I was trying to figure out a good number for where I should start, where I should chase, like what number I should chase for the target.
Because you said it was 600,000 for 7,000 square feet.
Yeah, it's about 7,000 plus 2 warehouses plus a rental, an apartment, and 7 acres.
But right now, just with the storage part alone, you'd be at $85 a square foot.
Right, which is rather high.
A lot. I mean, to me it is, but I don't know what the area calls for over there, just looking at it.
Yeah, not $85 a square foot.
Yeah. So
Michelle Walters, do you have some input on this? I know you recently purchased one that came with a bunch of land and all that. Do you have any input for Jonathan on this?
I was trying to figure out how to compare the scenario. The land that we've got, like, we're on a state route, but it's an excessive amount of land. I mean, we're talking an extra 30 acres. We have to be careful not to landlock some of it. So it was, yeah, as far as development and stuff go, like, it's a different demographic. Like, the developers are still dealing with the LOI back and forth with us of trying to nab up some of this land to put in townhouses to rent out. And they offered to build us the storage expansion behind our facility in order to do it. We could offload the land and just take the cash and run. That is an option. But I kind of feel like we have the upper hand in this scenario. So I'm being really greedy right now, and I'm hoarding this land because now I know that everybody wants it and I don't want to get rid of it. Anything as far as advertisement, are you able to do any deals with pulling extra money off of this land if you don't sell it, or if there's a zoning issue you would run into?
So the county is pretty much a no zone county. Like,
Okay.
there is no zoning requirements in this county.
So you can
at
do whatever
all.
you want.
Yeah, pretty much.
So would you be able to maybe, if you decided to hold on to this because you can't find a good enough buyer to really give you what you want them to give you, to make any extra money off of it as far as putting up like billboards or cell tower situation to lease the land, or, you know, different ways that you could add some income from it?
I don't know. I don't think billboards are going to work in that area on that stretch of property. It's not, I would say it's probably not traveled enough. I mean, I would be shocked if there was 10,000 cars a day. I would be floored actually if it was that much. Cell service is actually pretty good in the area, so I don't think that's really going to be a possibility. I mean, I'd have to reach out to cell providers to see if that's a thing that they'd be interested in. I mean, like I said, that electric co-op is right there. Maybe I could just lease a chunk of the property for them to store a bunch of, transformers and trucks and whatever. If they don't already have it. I mean,
that's the other thing. I've had quite a few trucking guys, whatever, trucking company, whatever, people that drive truck, call to ask if we had a space for them to get their trucks in there, which I do, but I can't get them in our gate because of the turn to make it in. They'll take my bollards out. They'll take my gate out. So I still can't do that. But that's another thing is, there's that I'm seeing, at least up here, is there's not a lot of places for truckers to park the rigs that they drive around.
That would be an option, but I'd probably have to put in another culvert and another entryway specifically for them.
Yep.
And then fence it in.
I mean,
that
you could
would be something
dig
I
a
want to
pond
fence in.
and make a pay lake. I mean,
A pay lake. What is a pay lake?
yeah. I mean, it's Kentucky. You'd imagine they probably fish like crazy there. So
Oh, that type of okay.
I don't know. Without and what that location would even look like in backwoods in Kentucky, but it could be a lot of different areas.
Thanks. Albert, I see you have your hand up. We can't see your smiling face, but do you have a question or did you have input on this?
Yeah, thank you very much there, Scott, and thanks to Andy for hosting this event, as well as Joe and Scott. Scott, I had the pleasure of speaking with you about a couple of months ago. I hope you had a good trip to Danbury, Connecticut when you swung by. But yeah, I actually had a couple of questions, not directly related to what was just spoken about, but I did want to ask the question. What would be advised to any newbies that should come across any self-storage opportunities that do come across a bit of land? I mean, Michelle was just talking about quite a bit of acreage there, and I was like, wow, that's amazing. But like, granted, if I was attracted to the opportunity, how would you advise an investor pitching the opportunity to potential financial partners, considering the fact that, probably a good chunk of the money is going to be associated with the property, with the opportunity is going to be on the land, because there is so much, it's like, it seems kind of speculative, and I don't know of many folks that will take their chances on a newbie, considering, if it's highly priced. Do you understand my question there? Or is it far-fetched?
I understand your question. If you find a deal, how are you going to find investors that might want to invest with you on the property?
Well, if the property's got a lot of land, and it seems like that's going to be a good portion of the asking price.
If it's got a lot of, what was that?
Land, a lot of acreage.
It used to be more valuable than it is now in the storage world. In a storage facility, land, we value it this much. That has come down some. They're looking more at just the raw numbers. But it's, what can you get per acre for just in the neighborhood? That's the biggest thing you gotta look at. California, you're getting $1 million for, a quarter acre. In rural Alabama, you're getting 15 grand for an acre. Yeah, it's kind of hard to say. And what can you do with that land? I hope that answers your question. If somebody has something else, I would appreciate you jumping in.
Yeah, for like an operator like Michelle, who I know is pretty experienced. I mean, this is obviously not. I mean, it is a challenge, but relatively speaking, it may not be much of a challenge. But for a newbie who's never done any development or anything like that, one can give a great idea, a great dream, and say, "Well, I'm gonna take down the facility, which I know how to operate, I know how to work with, but then I got all this extra land, and I plan on building, 5 extra buildings or whatever, and that type of thing." And people are going to be like, "Whoa, you're getting ahead of your skis here." It's like it's a little ambitious there. So if anything, it's just all about selling the dream, selling the idea, and pitching it. But how do you necessarily give that narrative to potential financial partners, angel investors, that type of thing?
With this facility that we did, the big one, it was actually just our second facility. And it was completely empty when we bought it. So it was negative revenue day one. The only thing
Wow.
that kept it going was the fact that it was in a really good spot as far as it was up by the lake, and we knew the income. I mean, it should pull, $350 a year once we did get it up and running. So I mean, I think we paid 1.7 for it, 25, almost 26,000 square foot on 38 acres on a state route, completely empty, and had been for the last couple years. It came with 3 commercial properties up in the front as frontage. But I negotiated the terms. So as far as the payment, I have no payments for the first 12 months. The second and third year, it's on an owner finance deal. Second and third year are on interest only. And then we pulled in 2 investors for the down payment of 300,000. So it wasn't that this property was making any money at all. It was the terms that got it, and knowing what it should be and the market that it was in. My competition is a few miles away. And the town that we bought it in, we are actually the property on the township, and then the city is above us, and they have an ordinance that they could not build any new storage. So there was just a lot of things going well for it that all hands on deck just had to happen, and I just couldn't let that one go. But so since Mother's Day, we've had I think 56 rentals right now. So within the first month of renting out units, it paid its own bills as far as, utilities, software. I haven't had to put any of my money in to run it, except for our CapEx that we paid up front, which is like cameras. We had to haul out a bunch of trash, which actually cost me 18 grand to haul out all the trash that everybody had deserted their stuff from when they closed the facility down. So we probably have 40,000 in CapEx that we did up front. So when Scott says that you find the deal, you find the money, that's how it goes. If it's a deal, it's a deal. You'll have people be able to help along the way. Every scenario is different. We were not looking for a facility that was losing money. That's just how it happened.
Thank you, Michelle. That was a fantastic answer. And it seems to me like you're a master negotiator, first of all. And I think you hit upon something key there, and that is that you managed to dictate the terms to buy the opportunity. And I think that's what made this whole opportunity well worth it. So congrats, and thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
I did have relationships. Yeah. Scott, one more question, please, if you don't mind.
Well, I'll be real quick. The guy running the Zoom, I know he's got to go. So,
okay,
really give me a
quickly.
call on the side, go ahead, or if it's quick, go ahead.
Sure. Michael mentioned the fact that, call centers. Just wanted to know if you wouldn't mind, for those folks that are new to self-storage, could you give examples of some call centers and operators that, are able to manage facilities on behalf of the owners?
It's a big question, but easiest thing to do, I will say, if you look up Easy Storage Solutions, ESS, I'm going to say 75%, if not 90% of the people in Mike's group use that call center.
Fantastic.
So it's
Thank
Easy
you very much
Storage
again.
Solutions. Look them up. Yeah. Well, thanks everybody for joining. Sorry we got to run. I know we wrap up at 10:30, but the guy running the Zoom, I want to let him go. And but thanks everybody, and we're doing a live event in 2 weeks, right, Joe? In 2
Yeah,
weeks, tell about the live event you'll be
Yeah,
doing.
we're going to be going over storage. It'll be live. East Rochester Ferraris. Go on the FREIA website, FFREIA.com. Starts at 7. Networking is around 6:30. And then we stick around afterwards to talk network. So definitely come check us out. Third Thursday of the month. All right. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Have a great day. Go do real estate.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.
Let's fucking go.